Executive summary. The build-up to the Federal Capital Territory Area Council elections held on Saturday, 21st February 2026 was in compliance with the Electoral Act 2010 as amended. In line with the provision, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, accredited some foreign and local observers, organizations, and other stakeholders to observe the process. On Saturday, February 21st, 2026, Independent National Electoral Commission conducted election into the 6 area councils of the Federal Capital Territory, FCT, namely Abaji, Abuja Municipal Area Council, AMAC, Bwari, Gwagwalada, Kuje, Kwali, and a total of 68 seats and 6 chairpersons and 62 councillors were selected to be filled. The coalition deployed a total of 500 observers for the election and declared open its own situation room for receiving real-time report from our field observers on election day. According to INEC, a total of 1,680,360 registered as voters. However, 1,587,225, that is about 94.4%, collected their PVCs, making them eligible to cast their vote on election day, while a total of 637 candidates from 17 political parties contested the 68 available seats. Election was conducted in 2,818 polling units out of the 2,822 polling units across the 6 council areas. This was because there were no registered voters in 4 polling units. Below is the summary of our preliminary observation and findings. Number 1, FCT Minister, however, declared restriction for the first time of movement for the first time in history of Federal Capital Territory elections in Nigeria. There was absolute compliance with the restriction of movement. Shops and other commercial centers were under lock and key. 2, opening of the polls, time of arrival of INEC and officials and materials. Reports from majority polling units, as we observed, were deployed. Indicated that INEC officials arrived at the polling units between 7 a.m. and 8:30 a.m., accounting for around 66% in polling units where we observed, while late arrival of polling unit officials and materials were also reported in a number of polling units between 8:30 and 9 to 11 a.m. due to logistic challenges, as observed in Garki particularly, where the materials were not distributed on time to the various polling units due to logistic challenges. Delineation of new polling units. The coalition observed a dramatic split of polling units in a few days or few meters away from their original polling units and remained within the same premises, although the Commission stated that the arrangement did not alter voters' registration status. But our primary concern is that INEC did not carry out adequate voter education and sensitization before the election. As such, voters experienced difficulties locating their designated polling units on election day. while others went back home out of frustration. Hence, they could not find their names in the original polling units or locate their polling units. Time of commencement of accreditation and voting. We observed on the field indicated that the majority of the polling unit or polling booths where our observers actually were deployed, accreditation and voting commenced simultaneously on the average between 8:30 to 10 a.m. However, it was observed that in some polling units, INEC officials had set up and had to wait for the voters to come out to cast their votes. Performance and conduct of INEC officials on election day. The majority of the polling units observed, INEC officials demonstrated the capacity and ability to operate the beavers, and understanding of the process of conducting elections. In other words, they were well trained. However, some of the ad hoc staff were yet to understand the use of the polling unit booklets that contain the register for observers, media, party agents, and security personnel to sign. Time of arrival. Our observers reported the presence of at least 3 security agents in most of the polling units observed. Our observers equally noted that the security personnel arrived much earlier than INEC personnel officials. However, contrary to assurance by the Assistant Commissioner Operations, majority of the security personnel were not given their allowances according to some of them we had interface with, and that is not our primary concern. However, a great concern to the coalition was the presence of armed vigilantes in places like Gwarimpa, Bwari, central areas, and Dutse Alaji. This was clear and against the electoral guidelines for the elections. Most worrisome was the self-imposed patrol of Abuja Municipal Area Council by the FCT minister himself, with heavily armed security personnel intimidating voters on election day, which is totally against electoral law and a rape of electoral process. Voters turnout. Apparently, low voter and voter apathy was recorded and marred the exercise on the election on Saturday. The Federal Capital Territory FCT Area Council elections experienced significantly low voter turnout, with only 18 voters recorded by 11:15 a.m. at 2 polling units in Galadima, Gwarimpa, as well as other polling units across the AMAC. Independent National Electoral Commission officials confirmed that the low participation attributing to possibly a voter disillusionment and so on, while Dawaki polling units also saw voter apathy. Garki recorded comparatively high voter turnout. With the exception of some rural communities across the 5 area council, voters' turnout was observed to be very low in most of the urban and semi-urban communities. For example, in Kuje, UBA primary school, Pasali, Sebiri Ward, PU 022, Kuje Area Council, out of 770 registered voters, only 69 voters came out to cast their vote. conduct of political parties and their agents. Our team observed that out of 17 political parties that field candidates, only about 5 political parties had their full complement of party agents in most of the polling units observed. Challenges on election day. The coalition observed the challenges and widespread irregularities, alleging intimidation, money politics, and executive misconduct on election day. The team further observed an incident in Gwarimpa where some armed policemen stormed a police polling unit and carried away some election materials, including ballot papers, and in attempt to resist their actions, their operations, an agent of ADC party was beaten to death. The corpse is still in the hospital, as we want to find out. It is pertinent to state here that at AMAC, somebody was also seriously beaten when it was discovered that he voted for PDP. And camera that he heard and some other handsets were damaged because of the recording that he conducted. More so, some INEC accredited observers were arrested and detained, which is also against the law. Vote buying. As with other elections in recent past, the scourge of vote buying and other inducement remains very much in our hands. Voters' inducement and vote buying in various forms and disguise was observed to be widespread during this particular FCT elections. Political parties remain active facilitators and mediators of inducement and vote buying. This was observed in Bwari, Duse, Alaji, Mpape, Katampe Village Square, Duse Ward, as well as AMAC. We observed with great dismay that APC manipulated the elections through inducement of electorate by giving voters money on the queue to vote for their party, which some people who received about 2,000 and above, in some polling units observed. Recommendations. The distribution of sensitive and non-sensitive materials, election materials, was largely effective and comprehensive and impressive. We commend INEC for its efficient and transparent manner in which these materials were distributed. INEC was proactive for putting in place assiduous measures that addressed administrative and deployment of supervisors, ad hoc staff across the FCT elections. Election materials arrived on time and gave room for early commencement of accreditation and voting in some polling units, while other places, we experienced delay in arrival of materials in those polling units. Conclusion. FCT election was generally peaceful. The collation process was full of mixed feelings and fears among some of the political party agents. However, we hope that the peaceful nature of the just concluded FCT election will be carried over into the forthcoming Osu and Ekiti election, as well as 2027 general elections. Finally, we urge all the political parties and their supporters who are not satisfied with the process, with the outcome of the election that was held on Saturday, to seek legal options rather than taking the laws into their hands. We want to reinstate in this preliminary declaration that with the outcome of the exercise, the election process was largely peaceful but lacks integrity because it falls below the framework of international best practices. Recommendations. The coalition wishes to call on all the authorities concerned for immediate improvement on the electoral legal framework. 2. Security agents should protect the rights of citizens not to intimidate voters on election day. INEC should note that free and fair elections are the bedrock of democracy and the beauty of democracy, and are essential to governance, to good governance that represents the will of the people as such. Therefore, should act as such. INEC should, as a matter of importance, be upholding the integrity of electoral process in future. INEC and political parties should understand that electoral process must be protected from all forms of intimidation, voter suppression, and electoral fraud. The coalition wishes to maintain that it is the responsibility of the government, the Electoral Commission, and all stakeholders to ensure that elections are conducted in a free, fair, and transparent manner as we obtain in other nations. We call on civil society, the media, and all Nigerians to rise up and continue to put all their efforts to promote and protect democracy in Nigeria. The coalition recognizes the crucial role of INEC and other international organizations in building strong democratic foundations for Nigeria. The coalition remains dedicated to working with INEC and other stakeholders to ensure that democracy flourishes in Nigeria. Finally, INEC and government institutions should be committed to upholding the rule of law to ensure that electoral process be guided by legal principles and ethical conduct to establish credibility and build confidence with the electorates. Well, it is quite unfortunate that in a democratic setting such as Nigeria today is pertinent to state that the legal system has been bastardized and everybody tends to be afraid of going to contact legal institutions because there's no more confidence in the legal sector, which are supposed to be the last hope of ordinary person. But today is a shameful thing that Nigeria can no longer approach legal system because of the failure of the system. If that may answer your question. Then the second one, the evidence we have enough of evidence with us, and of course we're going to present them in our comprehensive report. This is just a preliminary declaration. So in our comprehensive reports, you will see all this evidence being put in place there.
I don't know if you are aware that the FCT Minister, SYMFONI, was moving around on election day, also telling APC supporters that they should just cast their votes and leave the rest for him, as if he's the electoral umpire who conducts the election. So when a man makes such statements, you should be able to know that he's up to something. So I know that what they did in FCT election is a test case of what they plan to do in 2027, but Nigerians will not allow that. He made it open to everybody. Yes. That means he's up to something. He is not the electoral umpire. INEC conducts the election in Nigeria. Why will a minister make such statement in Nigeria?
Why moving around?
And on the election day, when he was supposed to be in his house and he's going about.
The restriction that he pushed in place, he was seen all over the place, intimidating voters. We are afraid.